Both sides reached a $22 million settlement in a case where a worker was injured during renovation at Camp Randall Stadium. It happened in April of 2022 during the stadium's south end zone renovation project. Documents say an employee of the project's general contractor lit a propane torch while the victim, Jeremy Rose, was applying a flammable material to the floor of a mechanical room. The explosion resulted in over 70% of Rose's body being burned. Attorneys for Rose allege that the general contractor failed to follow industry safety standards by not requiring that a hot work permit be obtained before using the open flame torch. The settlement was reached 10 days before a jury trial was set to begin. Rose's attorney released a statement following the settlement, saying, in part, quoting now, "For over 50 years, the construction industry and insurance companies have recommended the use of hot work permits to increase worker safety. There's a cost in human life and dollars in taking shortcuts when it comes to protecting workers," end quote.